As I started this job, my son was a 13-year-old, and now he's 21. So I've been doing this for 7 years, and I wish I had done this job while he was going through youth hockey, and certainly I wish I had done this job before I started coaching Division I college hockey, because it would have made me a much better coach. I travel all over the world. I talk with coaches, parents, sports scientists, child development scientists, Russia, Finland, the Czech Republic, Sweden, Switzerland, I mean everywhere. We meet with U.S. swimming, U.S. tennis, U.S. soccer, U.S. lacrosse, Major League Baseball, the NFL. I mean, what's really cool about the ADM right now is we were asked by the USOC, which is the Olympic Committee, if every sport that falls under their umbrella could use the ADM. So you're going to see ADM in soccer, lacrosse, baseball, swimming, tennis, you name it. If it's under the Olympic umbrella, they're going to have an ADM style program. And really what it is, it's to get parents and coaches and administrators to understand age-appropriate development. Because really the issue that we have is way too many of our kids are put in an adult culture way too soon. And the negative ramifications are really dramatic. And you don't see them, they're not life-threatening, but they certainly have long-term ramifications as far as their passion and the stunting of their development as an athlete and as a person. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. There's no bad question. If you have a question or you want to just go off on a different tangent, this is your guys' meeting. I'd be more than happy to. I've been doing this for 7 years. There's nothing I haven't heard or haven't discussed, and it's all good. I wish I had educated myself. I wish I knew this information for my own kid's sake. I really do, because he suffered because of my lack of knowledge on how my young son should be trained. And I look back at what he was doing when he was 10, 11, and I knew the dysfunctionality, but I didn't get involved until it was almost too late when he was at 13 years old. And if I'd gotten maybe involved at a younger age, when he looked at me when he was 15, 16 and said, "Dad, I want to do what you did," and I said, "Dominic, what's that?" He said, "I want to play college hockey." And then I had to take a long look at myself and say, my fault. Not his, my fault. Because I didn't have him in a culture that would give him that fighting chance. And it was my fault. And it's something I'll take to my grave, because it was a passion he had, but he didn't have the basic skills because of the environment that he was in at a young age. So that's why we're here tonight, to talk about that. So really, what makes a good youth hockey coach, what makes a good youth hockey parent, is to understand and embrace sports science and to be really patient. To be really patient is priority number one. You can't rush development. If you force feed development, the long-term ramifications is lack of passion at a critical stage in a kid's life. And really understanding and embrace the science that the program is based on. I'm not here because of my experience in hockey. I'm here because I had a passion for hockey. I stayed in it in the coaching side, and then I've learned through my experience of this job all the sports science of long-term athletic development. And that's the key, because this is the most important thing that I'll talk about tonight. This is what our program's entirely based on. And I know some of you might not be able to see some of these that well from the back, but this is long-term athletic training or development. These windows, we call these windows of trainability. This is the age of the athlete, female, male. This line right here is their rate of growth. From the time they're born to about the age of 5, there's a rapid rate of growth. And then from about 5 till the early stages of puberty, they kind of actually don't grow at all. In fact, they kind of stalemate. And then when they hit puberty, they just explode in all areas, and peak height velocity is basically at the height of their puberty. And then once that ends, their rate of growth just falls right off a cliff. Okay? The adults, we're in charge of a kid's development and the environment and culture that they're in up until about here. And then we pass the responsibility of development to the athlete. Now it's the athlete's turn, okay? And the reason for that is these windows are what we call the non-fun windows. This is where you got to get in shape. This is where you got to get faster. This is where you got to get stronger. This is where you got to eat properly. You got to sleep properly. You got to make sacrifice. You might not be able to go hang out with your friends if I want to take that next step as an athlete. I'm going to have to make choices on how I train and how hard I train and what I give up. And that's not easy. And it takes a great deal of passion. People don't realize that the people that we watch on TV, it's not all easy. It's not all fun and games. I was fortunate enough to coach guys like Timmy Thomas and Marty St. Louis and Johnny LeClaire, and I coached 6 of our national teams. And you know, 25, 30 guys that play in the NHL that you're watching. It's not all glorious. There's a lot of hurdles. There's a lot of adversity. There's a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of sweat and pain and blood that goes into that. And people don't realize it. People think that these guys are just born. I mean, Timmy Thomas came to me as a 21-year-old. He started hockey at the age of 10. Nobody wanted him. Nobody wanted the kid. We only got him at Vermont because our goalie signed at the age of 10. Signed after his sophomore year. He was an All-American, signed with the Blackhawks. We didn't have a goalie. So I went out and watched a couple games in the summer and saw this kid from Michigan who was playing Tier 2 junior hockey and offered him a scholarship. And that was in middle August, and he showed up at UVM and was a 4-year All-American, and you know what he did here in Boston. I mean, he's one of the more decorated American goalies we've ever had. You know, Conn Smythe, 2 Vezinas, a Stanley Cup. For a kid that nobody wanted. Passion, hurdles, over the Finland, back to the minors, blow out his knee, back to Finland, back to the minors, back over to Finland. The Bruins take him. The Bruins don't like him. They ship him out. He has a good year. He has a bad year. I mean, it's nonstop. So the point is, to be really patient is critical. And then to understand where your child is on this chart is really, really critical. So if my son or daughter is 5 to about 9 years old, all I'm trying to do is create a little athlete. They're in what we call their suppleness window. And suppleness is just your agility, coordination, and balance. There's 2 early specialization sports in the world: gymnastics and figure skating. Why? Because once they reach this stage up here and they get through puberty, they're less flexible, they're more rigid. They can't do some of that stuff that we ask those young, small gymnasts and figure skaters to do. They just can't do it at that level anymore. So those are 2 early specialization sports, and a big part of it's because of their physical growth, but also because suppleness is the first window. What really hurts our young kids today is the lack of physical education that's happening in our schools. Go home and ask your son or daughter to do a somersault. Ask them to do a cartwheel. They haven't done gymnastics. It's an absolute, I'll show you a video, it's a disaster. I watch kids try to do somersaults at 14, and I'm afraid they're going to snap their necks. They have no concept of tumbling. We did it in school every day. Well, they're not getting it anymore. And then the early specialization in sports. I work for USA Hockey, and I'm telling you, please, the worst thing you can do is have your kid play year-round hockey. Go play baseball, go play soccer, go play lacrosse, go play tennis, go do anything, but don't play hockey year-round. Because hockey year-round is the number one reason for kids getting out. 60% of the kids that start hockey in Massachusetts are out by Pee-wee. 60%. There's that big of a drop-off. And a big part of it's because it's just way too serious, way too soon. And the patience is not happening. So if I'm coaching squirts, you know, from about 7.5 or 8 to about 12.5, my focus is on skills because I know they're in their skill acquisition window, okay? The second window. So I'm focused on touches and repetitions. I'm not focused on what team he plays on, what league they're in, what their record is. I don't care about that as a parent or a coach. I care about, and I go watch practices, is my kid actually touching the puck? Is my kid active? Does practice look like recess on steroids? Because I grew up in Minnesota, and I can tell you why I got a scholarship to play at Maine and why I ended up being drafted by Vancouver and trying out for the '84 Olympic team was solely because I was on outdoor ice 2 days after Halloween every year in high school. I skated probably 60, 70 hours a week. It wasn't some great coach. It wasn't some super league I was in. It's because I had passion and I worked at it, but had fun working at it on my terms. We don't have that anymore. I mean, I was just in Michigan last week working with our national team in Plymouth, and it was 75 degrees in Michigan a week and a half away from Thanksgiving. We don't have that culture anymore. So everything's become structured and overcoached, and so we're not developing high-end athletes. I would ask all of you, do you want your kid to play in the NHL? And I'm not going to embarrass anybody, and nobody would raise their hand, and then I would tell all of you that you're liars. If my son could do what Timmy and Marty did, I mean, make $60 million playing a sport they loved, where do you sign up for that? Never have to work another day in their life at the age of 38? Go fish and hunt and be with your kids just because you played a sport and you were good at it? There's nothing better than that. But there's a right way to get there and a wrong way to get there, and unfortunately, there's too much wrong right now because we're not focused on this. This early speed window is change of direction. It's from here to that chair. It's from here to this pole, this pillar. It's not 200 feet. That's why we put, sports science is why we went to cross ice at 8 and under. And we have people fighting us, calling us and screaming at us that we're not letting their kids play the real hockey game because we're making them go cross ice or half ice. And yet that same family or that same parent or that same coach, I go to their driveway and they have a basketball net that's got a lever on the back of it and it's at the lowest level. Why? Because it's age appropriate. That's what this is all about. Treating kids like kids and not little miniature adults. This stuff over here, like I said, is not fun. And the reason why these boxes are dotted because they can slide based on the kid's physical development. Okay? So when you step back and you think about what your son or daughter is doing in any sport, in anything they're doing, school, music, anything, think about what window they're in. Think about a kid learning to speak a different language. How much easier is it for a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old to learn a foreign language than it is for a 50-year-old to learn a language? I know buddies that played over in Europe. They played in Sweden. They played in Germany. Their kids went to 1 year of school. They'll speak German for the rest of their lives because they were young. And it's easy. They just absorb it. It's amazing. Yet, as we get older, it's more difficult. So to teach an old dog new tricks is really difficult. So to be aware of what your kid's doing at a young age is critical. And you can see if you have a female athlete, things happen much sooner. Things are a little bit more scrunched up. So we got to be even more cognizant about what they're doing at certain ages. Anybody have any questions on this slide right here? Because there's not a bad one at all.
Is this something you can get like on the ADM site?
Yeah, if you go on admkids.com, admkids.com or usahockey.com, or I'll put my email address and my cell phone number up at the end, and you can call me and I'll send you all this. Okay? So right now the focus in New England is the training model versus the competition model. Everybody's focused on this. Nobody's focused on this. We've lost our way through the woods because this has taken over. It's all about the game. It's all about the game. The game is the kids. That's their deal. The training is the adults. That's where we need to take control. That's where we got to make sure the environment's proper. The game, that's for the kids. That's for the players. We have a saying in college hockey, it'd be the best job in the world if it wasn't for Friday and Saturday. Friday and Saturday stinks. I mean, ask Dave. I mean, Dave's a good friend of mine and coaches here at Holy Cross. He loves Monday through Thursday because he's running practice. He's designed practice. He's trying to make his guys better. And then he gets there on Friday and Saturday, and he's standing back, and he's just evaluating. He's got to pass the responsibility over to his players because they got to perform. But he's got to set the table during the week. And then as a coach, you kind of lose control a little bit on Friday and Saturday. And you hope that your guys are prepared. You hope that they're ready. But what's happened is the adults have so focused on this that this has really been hurting. Really has been hurting in our area. Not just in hockey, but in all sports. This is why we have an issue. This is what really scares us. Yeah.
Sorry, before we move on, I had a question about the competition versus trade.
Yep.
And something that I think concerns me when you have an organization like the Crusaders, who I think is on the early wave, at least locally, in trying to adopt a lot of the ADM
Yep.
principles, is it does focus more on the skill development and on the competition.
Yep.
And I'm concerned that with other programs in the area focusing more on competition, you're going to have kids who are developing for the long term, but in the short term, they're losing games and they're getting blown out. And
Perfect.
that's another way that they get stirred.
No, that's exactly what you want. You're going to lose the battle to win the war. Because that's exactly that kind of mindset's exactly why this is the situation. The anchor of USA Hockey right now is where we're sitting, Massachusetts. You go back 25 years ago, it was one of two of the best areas for developing high-end athletes. By far, it was Minnesota and Massachusetts. They were even. And then Mass has just completely fallen off the map. Completely fallen off the map. Because everybody's worried about winning games. We just met with the Swedes and the Finns and the Czechs and the Swiss last week in Michigan. Swedes and the Finns do not even keep standings until the age of 13. They don't care. They could care less about what the score of the game is. They don't care. They don't care if they get blown out 25-0, because they know if they do it right and they do it well and they focus on sports science and they understand it, that when they're 13, they're going to start crushing people. And that's why the two best countries in the world right now, by far, the #1 ranked country in the world right now in hockey is Finland. The #2 ranked country in the world in hockey is Sweden. #3 is Russia. 4 is Canada. We're 5th. Yes?
So how do you explain that concept to 8 and 10 and 12-year-olds and the parents of 8 and 10 and 12-year-olds who are, we're getting crushed now, and they're going to go to a different local program that's not doing this? I mean, how do you
Be patient.
How do you retain the kids?
Patience.
And
Don't put the focus on the game. Put the focus on the practice. If you're going to miss something during the week, miss the game. Don't miss the practice. Put the emphasis back on practice. Put the emphasis on the unstructured. Put the emphasis on what they're doing with their friends. 10-year-old, I can guarantee you right now that if Marty St. Louis, who's going in the Hall of Fame, was sitting right here, and I asked Marty what his record was when he was 10, he would look at me like I had 10 heads and say, I got no idea. I have no clue what my record was at 10. I can barely remember my last year with the Rangers, let alone 10. So we get kind of caught up in that, and I totally understand where you're coming from, because that is the norm. That's 99% of the population. That's the whole emphasis is swung. The pendulum is swung so far the other way. I can remember as a kid, my parents didn't even come to my games. They dropped me off. They went and got coffee with their friends. They'd come back and pick me up. They could care less. My grandfather never saw my dad play once. My dad was in a rock band, had the #1 song in the country, and why he did this is a family curse. He kicked Bob Dylan out of his high school band, who just got a Nobel Prize. I'm like, Dad, seriously, what are you doing? Never saw my dad play the drums. Never. My grandfather. That wasn't his deal. That was my dad's deal. So what's happened is we've gotten so, and I'm guilty of it as anybody, we want to be entertained. We want to see our kids be successful. Nothing wrong with that. But there's a piece of patience and there's a piece of sound developmental science that needs to go hand in hand with that. That's the whole key to this. So we got to get back to this. Hand this over to the kids. Let them have fun with it. The other thing I would tell you is no matter what you do in the short term, if you're a smaller association going up against a bigger association or a more established association or a more traditional association, you're going to lose those games early on, no matter what you do. No matter what you do. It's pure numbers. I mean, there's a reason why Canada is still pretty good and why the U.S. is still pretty good. Canada's got 500,000 kids playing hockey. If Canada was doing, and the U.S. was doing what we've been doing the last 20 years, and we didn't have 350,000 and 500,000 playing, we would get absolutely annihilated by Sweden and Finland. So what allows us to stay in is we have a pretty good pool of survivors. and we have some areas in the country that do a pretty good job. And even within areas that are struggling, there's parts that do a really good job. So and we call those talent pools. I mean, there's a reason why Brazil in soccer plays futsal until the age of 14. And futsal is basically in a room that's the size of a gym. They play 4-on-4, small ball, big net. They don't let them play full field soccer. They don't keep score. All they care about is get the ball, score it. Get the ball, score it. We can teach defense. It's tough to teach creativity and offense. That has to be experienced. Okay? So this is the current situation that we have right now. We're working really hard to change these numbers. We want these numbers to catch up and surpass these guys. And you might not, your goal certainly doesn't need to be your kid playing in the NHL. But what this tells us is that if we have so few kids going up to the higher levels, that means high school hockey's not as strong as it should be, Bantam hockey's not as strong as it should be, that we're just not developing, if we're not developing high-end talent, we're not developing middle-level talent, we're not developing a lot. So we got to just restructure our focus and our drive to the right direction. And the right direction is building passion, which is having fun, and developmentally sound. Those three things. And passion and fun go hand in hand. So to me, this is really critical. We have to embrace failure. We have to allow our kids to fail. In fact, we have to encourage our kids to fail. And as a former 8th grade earth science teacher, when those kids brought in their earth science projects, and I got the little volcano with the Alka-Seltzer in it, and this jello was bubbling up, and then I got a nuclear plant over on this side, I know little Joey did this, and little Billy, mom and dad did a lot of this. So how do I grade that? Right? I'd rather have the kid do something, fail at it, learn from it, and become a better person and athlete for it. There's one reason and one reason only why the Patriots are one of the top franchises in the world, maybe in the history of sports, or could go down that way. I've been fortunate enough to watch their practices. They're not physically demanding. But Coach Belichick forces this every day in practice. So when they get to Sunday, they've already seen it a million times. They've already failed 10 times at something in practice so that they don't fail on Sunday. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to watch your kid fail. It's not easy to see your kid go through adversity, but it's so critical. It is so critical. And that's why patience for our coaches and our parents is absolutely imperative, because we learn through failure. And we have to force failure to happen in practice, and we have to encourage it, and we have to let the kids understand that it's okay. It's okay. We don't have to be perfect at this age of 6. It's not fair. It's not realistic.
I've never seen somebody so afraid to fail. I've never seen a society so afraid to fail. Pride and ego have taken the forefront of athletes' work ethic, pushing back the vulnerable mentality it takes to improve one's game. We obsess over perfection while forgetting the process of imperfection it takes to get there. Show me a player who's shooting 100% in practice, and I'll show you a player who's not taking game-like shots. Show me a player who doesn't lose the ball, and I'll show you a player who isn't going hard enough. Show me a player who doesn't make mistakes, and I'll show you a player who's not getting better. It's funny because the other day, a player came up to me and said, "Hey Trey, how many free throws did you miss?" I said, 14. What about you? He said with a smirk on his face, 0. I said, well, how many did you shoot? He said 15. I said, I shot 100, fail harder. I challenge every hooper who steps foot on that court. Fail harder. Don't worry about what your coach may think. Don't worry about your friends judging you. Nobody Any coach who bashes you for taking a risk and making a mistake, he's no longer a coach, he's a critic. Any friend who judges you for your mistakes in practice aren't your friends anyway. While they're busy critiquing, let's get better. Let's see who really has the last laugh. Tell them to enjoy their time now, because our time is coming. All we did was take the long way, the right way. Fail harder now, so you can succeed easier later.
So that's just a video that just kind of explains what I was talking about, and just encouraging that environment, that learning through failure and through hard work. There's no shortcuts to getting to where you want to get to in anything you do. So you got to do it the right way. You got to encourage that environment that's safe, not only emotionally, mentally, but encourage failure. It's absolutely critical. This is an issue here. This is more for the coaches in the room. We do a lot of stuff around cones. We do a lot of stuff skating around circles. We do a lot of stuff in open space. There's another reason why we want kids in small spaces. The better the player, the more conflict, the more space we take away. Okay? The weaker the player, give a little bit more space, a little bit more time to make a play, get their head up, and make the right play. But the better the player, the smaller the space. The unfortunate part of what we have right now in New England is the better the player, the more space we're giving them. And it's really kind of backwards. That's why 4-on-4 cross ice for our upper level mites is so critical. That's why the Europeans play cross ice until the age of 10. They don't allow their kids to play full ice until the age of 11. And so it's really critical that in your practice environment, you're forcing conflict so that it's a realistic game-like situation, so that practice isn't easier than the real game. Practice needs to be more difficult than the game. Not just physically, but more importantly, emotionally and mentally, as far as the conflict they have to face and the adversity they have to face and the failure that's going to be forced. So that when they get to the game, it's like, oh, this is easy. This is easy. But a lot of our practices are actually a lot easier than the actual game environment. So you want to see stuff where kids are battling each other. There's not a lot of space. They have to use their head. They have to use their hands. They have to use their feet to create time and space. It's absolutely critical. That's why a friend of mine didn't believe me about station-based practices, having 40 or 50 kids on the ice at practice, working in small stations, focusing on individual athlete development, until Manchester United was playing at Gillette, and a buddy of mine was the coach, the mentor coach for Manchester United, a guy named Bill Beswick. And I asked Bill if my buddy could go over and watch practice because they were playing a friendly against the Revolution. And he said, sure, I'll come down, I'll meet him, and I'll walk him around. So I called my buddy after he went to practice. I said, so what did practice look like? These are the best soccer players in the world. They're making $40, $50 million a year. Some of these guys, they had to pay like $118 million for a couple guys in the team just to get them to come to play on the team. He said, oh, yeah, it was all small space stuff. It was one-on-one, two-on-one, station-based practice. I said, so if the best athletes in the world that are making 50, 60, 70, $100 million a year can do that, you think your squirt team can pull that off a couple times a week? Because that's how you develop kids, is you put them in small spaces, you focus on their individual needs, and you're not focused on the team. If I'm coaching a youth hockey team, I'm not worried about the 13, I'm worried about the 1, and the 1, and the 1, and what they need emotionally, mentally, and physically to help them get to the next level, to help them, to move them along. If I'm teaching a classroom, I can't teach to the top, I can't teach to the bottom, I can't teach to the middle. I got to teach to the top, the middle, and the bottom. I got to make sure my better students are challenged. I got to make sure my weaker students are building confidence and understanding. I'm going a little bit slower with them, and I'm making sure the middle is getting pulled up and not dragged down. It's the art of teaching. It's the art of coaching. It's really hard in today's world to do it, but it's really critical, absolutely critical.
When you come to a team like the Detroit Red Wings, and when you arrive, Steve Eisen is like that, or Nicholas is like that, or now when you arrive, Pavel Datsuk is an absolute workaholic on and off the ice. It's not by accident that these guys are this good. It's because they work that hard. And when you watch have every day after practice or before, and you watch how hard he works. It's not by accident he's as strong as he is and can play the way he is. And so to me, that's what separates. There's lots of nice players in the league, but they don't get to play long at the end of the year because it's not about being a nice player. It's about winning your battle every time you're on the ice. And there's no space and there's no room, and the ice gets worse as the year goes on. And so it's not about being pretty, and it's not about open ice or who looks good in practice with no pressure on them. It's who can make a play in a small area and win a battle. To me, that's the game.
So the key, who can win a battle in a small space? That's the game of hockey. It's not where you stand. It's not positional play. It's not the team. It's can the individual win a race to the puck, win the puck in a tight space, make a good decision, and attack open space. And so what's happened is we've gotten so caught up in, I call it, the analogy I use, if I'm the Ohio State marching band director, and I'm recruiting for the Ohio State band, and I got to perform at halftime of the Ohio State-Michigan game, and my guy's got to dot the I, and it's going to be on national television, am I looking for musicians, or am I looking for marchers? I can take a great musician and teach them how to march. Really tough to take a great marcher and make them a great musician when they're 19 and 20 years old. We have a lot of kids that can march. We don't have a lot of great musicians because the focus is on the marching. It's on the team. It's on the positional play. It's not on the individual skills needed to perform and take that next step as an athlete. And so we would say just change the focus a little bit. Just come back to the individual needs of the athlete. Focus on the individuals on the team, not the team. And then you're going to have more success in the long term.
That's Sam. Okay, ride the blue bike.
So Sam is 9.
And stop. Okay, Sam, ride the white bike. Okay, Sam, ride the purple bike.
Besides child endangerment, the point there is we have way too many Sams on the big bike. They're not building confidence. They're not having fun. They're in an adult culture. They're not ready for the adult culture. They don't like it. They're scared, and they quit. And if they don't quit, they kind of cocoon themselves. They protect their egos. They don't try as hard. They don't get out of their comfort zone. They don't engage with other kids. We've got to make sure that Sam, probably the best bike for Sam was the middle one. He was confident. He was having fun. He had a smile on his face. In fact, when he came in, he laid some rubber, right? That's where Sam needs to be. Sam is a 9-year-old kid. He needs to be in a 9-year-old environment. We can't put Sam in an adult environment because that's what happens. And I see it day in and day out in our sport. All over the world, all over the country, I see this happening. And it's just because we're in too much of a rush to get them to the same thing that you watch the guys on TV doing, the same thing that you watch Coach Berard and the Crusaders here doing. You can't do it that way. It doesn't work. And at the end of the day, there's, like I said, there's long-term ramifications for being in too much of a rush and forcing things to happen when they're not emotionally, physically, or mentally ready for it. So again, this just goes back to talking about patience, being really patient with how the environment you put your kid in at a young age. Interesting little study here. This is what we would call a talent pool. This is considered, Skellefteå, Sweden is considered the best training area for hockey players in the world. This is a picture in 2008, 2009 of Skellefteå, of the kids that played in Skellefteå that ended up playing on Sweden's national teams. There's 7 first-round draft picks. Ekblad is the number 1 guy out of this group. He's considered one of the top defensemen in the world right now. He's playing in the NHL. He's down in Florida Panthers. I was just with him last week. He's a stud. This is out of 400 kids in one town of 40,000. 7 first-round draft picks from one town, one association. How is that possible? How could that happen? Is it the water? Were their parents all NHL, just phenomenal athletes? Or is it the culture that they create within their association that allows these kids to reach their full potential if they want to? This is their rules. Ice is only in the rink 6 months a year. No cutting. They're not allowed to cut anybody from anywhere. They encourage multi-sport and then late specialization. Parent or volunteer coach until the age of 14. There's 700 kids skate twice a week, 10 and under skate 3 times, 12 and under skate 4 times. That's it. That's how they develop their players. Their focus is on individual skill development and building passion. And it works. Boy, does it work. When you see it in action, you can see the difference in a month in the kids once you commit to training them properly and doing it right in the environment and culture that you create. I'm just going to show you. I mentioned I was just in Michigan, so we had the top. We developed these hardboards. You guys have the hardboards? Yeah. Do you? Only for team. Okay. So this is a practice setting where they set up the hardboards. They even they designed their own netting system. There was a high school practice on the other half of the rink. This is a Pee Wee group in Michigan, and once a week they play 4-on-4 for the entire practice. Why? Because they're trying to get the pond inside. They want these situations to happen over and over and over again and get kids to understand. This was like 4 years ago when we filmed this. I was just with this same group, not the same group. This kid was the same because his dad does my job in Michigan. He now plays for a team called Honey Baked, and I was with Honey Baked, Little Caesars, and the Columbus Junior Blue Jackets. They're 2002, so the second-year Bantams. 50 kids did this for an hour and a half. That was their game that weekend on Sunday. We sat and watched it. They had 4 teams of 12, and every minute the horn blew, and they came out and played 4-on-4. They had a little tournament, and it was amazing. So the point there is that we want kids in an environment where they're getting touches, they're getting repetitions, and these scenarios are happening over and over and over again. This is a huge, huge deal. This is the other reason why the Europeans are a little bit ahead of us in their development, is the off-ice piece. So the left-hand side is Finland's National 14 camp that we helped them run, and the right-hand side is a bunch of 10-year-olds up above the Arctic Circle in a town called Romaneki. They ask their kids to get to practice 45 minutes before their practice, and they do this. For 35 minutes, the kids get dressed, they're on the ice, they practice, and they go home. 3 days a week, they're doing this since the time that they're probably 7, and before that, they're doing it once or twice a week when they first start hockey. And so all they're focused on here is athleticism, foot quickness. Over here, they're doing tumbling on this mat. This is in the lobby of the rink. This kid's wearing a sweater vest, not a $250 Bauer sweatsuit. You don't need a these are their coaches that are running this, okay? And all I'm showing this for is what they're doing is they're just focused. They're back to the sports science. They're focused on developing athletes. That's it. It's a commitment to the individual athlete and their needs and building their foot speed, their agility, their coordination, and their balance. And it's, again, it's just, it has nothing to do with the game. It has nothing, this 35 minutes is considered practice. It's not an additional piece. And when they first started this in their country 10, 15 years ago, they'd get 1 or 2 kids that would show up because the parents are like, I don't want to go to the rink early. This is crazy. What are we doing this for? This is nuts. And then now they're at the point where not only are they there early, but the kids are just having a blast with it. Yes. No. This is just a town team, and so this is an hour above the Arctic Circle. This is as much of a. This would be like going up to Fort Kent, Maine, like up in the middle of nowhere, and it's just a town association, and this is what they do. But the whole country does this. The whole country does it. So it's not because the beauty of the ADM is the environment that you put the weakest and the, for lack of a better term, worst kid and the best kid up until the age of 13 is the exact same environment. There's nothing different. There's no difference in what you offer to a kid who's playing house league or a kid who's playing travel A. Up until 13, it's the same exact thing. Practices are done the same. Off ice is done the same. Why? Because they're in those windows. And we don't know who's going to be the better player. That kid that's on the house team, you're looking at a Bantam B hockey player in my hometown. I didn't make the Bantam A team. They made my high school team until I was a junior. But I was doing some of this on my own, not because I knew anything about it. My dad didn't know anything about it. It's just because that's what I wanted to do. But there was a culture in my town that if you wanted to get better, you had to go down to the rink. You had to work at it. You just wasn't going to get. You weren't just going to grow up to be a player. You had to actually put some time in. But it had to be fun time and passionate time. So yeah, their focus is on this, and creating an environment that's fun, but also developmentally sound. So that's the key. So we were asking our coaches now to set up something. Most of the places we went to in Finland, they didn't have an area in the rink. We were outside in the parking lot or in the field next to the parking lot in February in a foot of snow with the kids with their sweatsuits and hats on, doing tumbling and doing this same stuff outside. I ran the practice for this group, and I was like, I'm looking at my watch going, well, we got to be on the ice in 10 minutes. Like, these kids, they're not going to be ready, because I'm used to our kids, right, and my own son. Like, there's no way they're going to be ready. They beat me on the ice. Why? Because it's just, that's what they do. They leave here, the coaches put the stuff away, they run in the locker room, they get dressed, they're on the ice. I'm like, holy cow, this is amazing. But they've stuck with it. They're committed to it. They don't talk about it, they don't pretend like they're doing it, they actually do it. And that's what makes a big difference for all their kids. Question?
This being considered like calisthenics, what age do they have them start doing this?
This kind of stuff, they're doing something similar to this starting when they first started, 6, 7, 8. And then as they get, these are 14-year-olds, you can see the difference. Here they're building athleticism, agility, coordination, balance. Here they're starting to get into core strength and body weight. And then their older kids are doing weightlifting. They're doing actual training because they know that physically they're ready for that. They're not ready for that at 14. Their bodies, they haven't gone through, their growth plates aren't solid yet. You can do more damage by putting extra weight on their body. So just doing body weight stuff here is critical. So they understand the sports science behind how to train and develop kids. And listen, most of these kids here you see aren't going to play in the NHL, but that's their dream, that's their passion, that's their goal, you know? But so they just create the environment, and then the kids benefit from it. This happens to be a group of U.S. kids in Columbus, Ohio. Some of our top 14 and 16-year-olds in the country last May. Just a tad bit different than the 10-year-olds above the Arctic Circle. And the kids are actually laughing because they're like, I can't do this. I mean, you'll see this young man down here has never done a somersault in his life. So we have to go show him how to do a somersault. So the point of this is, the beauty of this right here is these kids, there's 5 former NHL players' kids in this. They just happened to retire in Columbus. One of them was a friend of mine, Frederick Modine, who played with St. Louis and Tampa. His kid is actually right here. And Freddie grew up in Sweden. He's looking at me and goes, I know, I've been telling them, they're not listening. They think I'm just some crazy Swede. I was just with this team on Sunday. The coach, before they went on the ice for the 4-on-4, great guy. He was in our class. We were training coaches in Columbus. He said, Coach Roger, come with me. He brought his whole team out into the parking lot. He made them do cartwheels and somersaults. He goes, what do you think? I go, oh my God. Same group, night and day, just in over 3 or 4 months, because he's implemented it into his program. And I said, so what's the translation to the ice? He said, there's definitely a correlation to their speed and their confidence on their skates, their change of direction, and their agility. He said it's amazing. Because him and the kids were so embarrassed because we were all kind of giggling at him a little bit. And so they're attacking it now. They're attacking it. And the only reason for me showing you that is, again, there's a process to this, and if we shortcut the process, there's long-term ramifications as far as their development as an athlete. Folks, this is my email address. That's my cell phone number. If you would like any of this, if you'd have a question, if you have a concern, if you didn't want to ask something here, if you wanted me to steer you towards some information, I'm your regional manager. I'm paid by the NHL to do this job. That's how committed they are to making changes in youth hockey in the United States. The Bruins are phenomenal. Those of you that are coaches, we have a symposium coming up a week from Saturday at the new Warrior Center, the Bruins practice facility, from 7 a.m. until 12:30. Those of you that want to get certified level 2, level 3, you have to register for that. Those of you that don't, it's free. Just make sure you sign up. Right now we're at over 300 coaches. Last year we had 650. You'll hear the entire Bruins staff speak. Every coach, including their goalie coach, their strength coach. Claude Julien will start it out. Joe Sacco. The whole group will speak. Then we'll have breakouts. Myself and a couple of the USA Hockey guys will speak. And then you can watch the Bruins pregame skate. They're playing that night at home. You can be a part of their practice. So it's a pretty cool deal. So if you go on the Bruins website or Mass Hockey website, you can sign up for that. Question?
Those kids on the national team now right there, I get the agility, the endurance, and I like that stuff, I think it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But where and when, at what age did they learn the theory of the game, the forecheck, the dumping the puck in, the chipping the puck in, the regrouping, and all that? When do they learn it?
So to me, I would ask you, for example, what's a breakout? And I would tell you right now, the biggest issue we have with some of our best players is they think a breakout is a dump in, the defenseman goes back to the puck, I'm the right wing, I go to the hash mark. And that might be the last place to go. To me, a breakout, and when you're coaching high-end players, a breakout is possession, support, transition. And that can happen 1,000 different ways. So I'm going to do stuff starting at mites where they're going to get possession, they're going to have to support it, they're going to have to transition it. It's a breakout. A forecheck is basically just, I don't have the puck, I got to go get it. I got to go get it. So I'm going to do stuff in practice that force kids to take angles, that force kids to track the puck, get it from another kid, and try to go score it. But I can't go 200 feet to do that. The most important reason why cross ice in small areas is so critical at a young age, it's a thing called lung capacity. Take a 6-year-old kid and his 14-year-old brother, put them in a pool, tell them to go on, put their heads underwater and hold their breath. 1,000 times out of 1,000 times, who's going to pop up first? The 6-year-old. Why? They cannot hold their breath. They cannot fill their lungs with that much oxygen. The best skill coaches in the world in any sport will tell you the worst thing you can do if you want kids to grasp something is to gas them. Imagine telling a kid to go run a 2 miles and then go take the SATs. They're tired, they're unfocused, they can't perform. So to have a young kid go 200 feet or even 100 feet to get one situation skill-wise is a detriment, doesn't work. That's why we have to go cross ice in small space as much as we can, because we want those scenarios to happen over and over and over and over again. How you learn how to do that stuff is not by talking to the kid, not by coaching the kid, but by them experiencing it. And they got to experience it in a game-like situation in a small space so that they learn how to read, They learn how to make a decision. They learn how to go to the right spot. And that's why in soccer, the biggest thing in soccer is how to support the ball defensively and how to support the ball offensively on a big field. So what do? They all do small spatial stuff, one-on-one, two-on-one, where they got to learn how to move without the ball and get to open space. Same thing we got to do in hockey. So those concepts and habits are critical, but the how we train them is completely different than how we trained them back in the 70s and 80s. I could go to Herb Brooks's practice. I played for Herbie one year. I could go to Herbie's practice and he could run me through the wall and do Herbie's and work on team play because I spent 6 hours a week on the pond. I was getting all the other stuff on my own time. So I could go be structured. I could go learn team play. I could go do that stuff because I had my own time of developing myself. Our kids don't have that, so we got to combine the two together now. And so the age where the team concepts become more important than the individual aspects start to happen at 14, 15, 16. Late Bantams, high school, college, and beyond. But until that time, I'm focused on individual athlete development. And I can guarantee you, if you talk to Coach Berard, he's spending a ton of time with his players here at Holy Cross trying to build their individual skills. Guarantee he's running skill sessions, and I guarantee a big part of his practice is small area games and individual skill development. Because that's all the NHL guys, all the NHL teams are hiring skills coaches, multiple skills coaches, and their whole goal is to take the players from here to here. Great question, though. Yeah.
Even in the small areas, 7, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, everybody wants to touch the puck.
They're bunched up. It's exactly what we want. The worst thing you can do is tell them to spread out. I would ask you, and I have clips on my computer, I would ask you to watch an NHL game today. All the NHL and college coaches are teaching swarm the puck. They want 2, 3 guys around the puck. They want to outnumber the puck. This whole thing about what we learned when we played, the wings are going to cover the points, the weak side D's in front of the net, that is so far gone now. It's all about swarm the puck, swarm the puck, swarm the puck, numbers on the puck. You'll watch an NHL game where 10 players, the 10 guys that are on the ice are in 1/6 of the rink at one time. It happens all the time. And so the whole idea of spreading out, the Russians do not allow their coaches to teach passing until the age of 9. Why? They haven't developed peripheral vision. You can't expect a kid to take the puck and try to go cross ice and score and see everything that's going on around them. That's why we moved full body checking from Pee Wee to Bantam, because peripheral vision. They haven't developed it yet. The people at the Mayo Clinic said that kid doesn't see that kid coming from out of the side of and just run him into the boards. He can't protect himself. They don't see it. So we want kids. We want scrums. We want battles. We want kids to have to win the puck under duress. We want numbers around the puck. We want kids to be aggressive on the puck. We don't want that kid to see there's a battle for the puck and I'm just going to stand out here and watch the battle. We want those kids in the battle. We want them in there trying to get the puck. We want it to be like, when we used to play, whatever you called it, rumble, whatever you called it in the backyard with a football, where a kid who gets tackled throws it up in the air and there's 5 guys trying to get it and everybody's trying to kill each other. That's what we want little kid hockey to look like. We want it to look like chaos. We don't want structure. We don't want skating your lane. I can coach skate your lane all day. I can't coach this, get in and battle and compete and win the puck. That's really hard. That's something that has to be experienced. So we got to be careful what we say and how we say it, and how much structure and discipline we put in a young kid's game. Yes.
I understand what you said earlier about not playing year-round. What do you do when that's all your child wants to do?
That's a great question.
I see the street hockey, the summer hockey, to volunteering with Learn to Skate, Learn to Play kids because he just wants to be on the ice.
How old is he?
11.
Yeah, the only thing I would tell you is this, and don't take this the wrong way, but my son will eat pizza every day, and I know it's not good for him. So there comes a point, because you're going to want him to have that same mentality when he's 14 and 15 if his goal is to move on. So you got to cocoon passion when they're young. You got to take it away from them. You got them to want it, okay? And so to zip the bag up, put it up in the rafters in the garage for a month or 2 or 3 months, awesome. Now, if he's out doing unstructured stuff, different story. But if the problem we have with spring hockey and summer hockey is it looks too much like winter hockey.
Yeah, no, summer hockey, it was just a group of kids that got together
But was there refs? Was there rules? So that we don't want that. If they just go to the rink and they're just playing, coach throws the pucks out and they're just horsing around, home run. But if there's rules and there's kids sitting on the bench, I mean, if you think about this, how our teams are structured, most of our teams are 15 kids, right? Kids play 12-minute periods. If I live here in Worcester and I'm playing in Providence and it's an hour drive, okay, 45-minute drive, I'm gonna commit like 4 hours on a Saturday or Sunday to play a game. And if everything works perfect, my kid's gonna get 12 minutes of activity for a 4-hour commitment. And we scratch our head, why aren't we developing kids? Well, if we ran a company where we were open for 4 hours and we had 12 minutes of activity, my workers, I'd be out of business in a month. So we gotta really look at the structure and the environment we put our kids in. So if they're doing unstructured, fun, just play, that's a whole different discussion. But if it's refereed, rules, and all that other stuff, you gotta be really careful because that'll suck the life out of them in the long term. One more question, and then we gotta go. Yes?
So my kid's in his second year of sports, and this year we've committed pretty hard to the ADM model.
Yep.
We're running ADM practices every week. And one of the big differences I'm seeing in the team from last year to this year is they seem like they're getting, you know, we go to play games on Saturdays, Sundays.
Yep.
Third period, they're gassed. They're out of energy. You know, and we didn't see that last year. And it feels like with the ADM, they're not getting as much conditioning and practice.
You can't condition a 10-year-old. It's absolutely impossible. If you saw that graph I showed you, conditioning doesn't hit until about 13, 14. You can't condition a young athlete. There's no such thing. Their bodies aren't able to be conditioned. Okay? The reason why they're gassed is exactly what I told you before. They're playing really, and we're not going to ever change this, sports will play full ice. They're playing in an adult environment with a little kid's body. And as they get older, the pace has gone up. The other kids are pretty good. So for me to chase a kid who can skate, I'm going to get gassed even that much faster. Okay? Because I can't sustain it. I cannot sustain it for that period of time. I mean, there's a reason why we don't have 10-year-olds running miles and 2 miles for races. You know, for little kids in PE. Like when I was in 6th grade, I can remember we got tested on the 300-yard shuttle or the 600-yard run, not the mile or 2 mile, or God forbid a 10-year-old runs a half marathon. Like they're just not designed to sustain that quality of work for that long period of time because their lung capacity and the way their bodies are built. It's just not healthy for them. So, but that's a great question. It's a really good question. Folks, thank you very much. If I can be of any help, don't hesitate to ask. And I wish you all the best of luck. And I would just ask you, with your kid, have fun with it and be patient with it and enjoy it because you're going to wake up one day and your kid's going to be 21 and you're going to go, what the heck happened? So have fun with it and best of luck to all of you. Thank you.